That's why today at our Farm to Fork Summit in Downing Street, we're going further. This morning, we announced measures to make our supply chains more resilient and provide more support for farmers to grow their businesses and export to the world. Later, we'll be hearing directly from farmers and industry leaders about how we can work together to export more great British food, increase productivity, and seize hold of new innovations. All to help us back British farmers, safeguard farming for the future, and grow the economy.
Well, let's add a dose of much needed reality to the Prime Minister's latest fairy tale video. Britain's farmers have been absolutely battered by the hard Brexit the Conservative government has inflicted on the country, and Sunak knows it. Britain's farmers have been clobbered by a perfect storm of rising costs, labour shortages and post-Brexit changes to support payments. And for the country it's even bleaker. An estimated 7 billion meals went to waste in 2022, with farmers citing Brexit and the resulting shortage of fruit and veg pickers as a key factor.
We have got people queuing up to come to this country to pick crops that are rotting in fields, to work in warehouses that otherwise wouldn't be operable, and we're not letting them in.
The National Farmers Union found some 40% of its members had lost crops because they didn't have enough people to bring in the harvest. Those shortfalls used to be met by seasonal workers coming in from the continent, but Brexit has shut them out, and so perfectly edible food is now left to rot. In 2022, a staggering £60 million worth of food was wasted on farms because of labour shortages. Don't just take my word for this. Listen to the president of the National Farmers Union, Minette Batters, speaking to Sky's Kay Burley on May 16th.
When we were members of the European Union, we were the preferred country to work in out of all member states. People wanted to come here, most of all, because it's highly regulated, it's well paid. And of course, that freedom of movement has ended. So now these visa schemes, we are bringing people in from very challenging parts of the world. In some cases, there's a lot of cost attached to coming here. And last year, as an example, with the crops, the fruit and vegetables and flowers, we wasted £60 million worth of high-quality fruit and vegetables.
Chronic post-Brexit labour shortages remain one of the industry's main challenges. But just listen to the Prime Minister's response to this crisis.
We know that chronic labour shortages and weak post-Brexit trade are holding economic growth back. You heard this morning businesses are saying we need looser immigration rules and closer ties with our biggest market, the EU. Are you listening to them?
I think the most pressing priority right now is tackling illegal migration.
So much for this.
All to help us back British farmers.
And if that's not bad enough, many farmers, with good reason, believe they've been undercut by the post-Brexit trade deals negotiated by the government. Listen to former Environment Secretary George Eustace addressing the House of Commons on the trade deal with Australia in November last year.
I was in the Cabinet in 2021, and I was in this Cabinet subcommittee that argued over the Australian trade deal. For yes, there were deep arguments and differences over how we should approach this. But since I now enjoy the freedom of the backbenches, I no longer have to put such a positive gloss on what was agreed. The first step is to recognise that the Australia trade deal is not actually a very good deal for the UK. The truth of the matter is that the UK gave away far too much for far too little in return.
We lose 4% of our GDP by Brexit. We gain 0.08% by the government's own estimate through this trade deal with Australia.
And then there was that trade deal with New Zealand.
British farmers have reacted with shock to the terms of a new free trade deal with New Zealand.
The deal will see Kiwi meat imported without tariffs, and farmers in the UK say they get nothing in return.
A world away from rejoicing Kiwi farmers, their welly-wearing counterparts feel as though they are the sacrificial lambs of the free trade deal.
We're not competing on a level playing field. It's us surrendering to you, New Zealanders, and giving you a great deal, and we're getting nothing out of it.
The impact on Britain's economy is expected to be negligible.
And you may need to sit down for this one. New pork markets, the government's trade minister has excitedly tweeted. Great news for British farmers who can now sell pork to South Korea. We've removed a barrier which blocked exports of products such as bacon and pork sausages and could be worth up to £1 million over 5 years. In fact, it's all going so badly, the government is now resorting to misinformation like this. We've secured new trade deals with over 70 countries since 2016. That's over £800 billion worth of new global trade, the Conservative Party has triumphantly tweeted. This tweet, shared by members of the government, has been slammed by the official statistics watchdog. Most of these deals were simply rolled over from existing EU agreements following Brexit. The figure refers to the total value of trade between the UK and the countries it's agreed trade deals with, not the value that they add. So saying these trade deals are worth over £800 billion in new global trade is just complete bollocks.